Hello everyone, my name is Arneson. I'm a landscape designer, and in this video I'm going to be walking you through how I make hand-drawn style illustrative plans using Photoshop. This is a great way to create a plan that is easily editable and has a very nice hand-drawn effect that a lot of clients like. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to start off with the AutoCAD base or drafted plan. In this case, it has all the layers on. I like to have 3 options, and then the other option is with all the plant materials turned on, so all your shrubs, trees, etc. And then another plan with just hardscape lines. And this will be so you can easily select the colors and infill later. So you're gonna import all these layers into Photoshop. I like to name each layer and color code them. You can do that by right-clicking and selecting the color, and then just group them so they're easily accessible later. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the magic wand tool and select all the areas that are the same. So in this case I'm selecting decomposed granite areas and then infilling them on a separate layer below the line layer. And then so there's some areas that didn't quite fill in the way I wanted to, so I needed to complete the line so that the magic wand could infill and select it properly. So that was the vegetation layer. I just selected that and then filled it with a green color for now. They don't have to be perfect colors, just right for now you just want to fill it so you can manipulate it later and easily select it for editing. And right now I'm selecting the mulch layer, and then now the concrete layer. I'm going to infill that with just a gray tone so we can edit it later with the concrete texture. And one thing to note is that the black and white drawings that we imported first, those are PDF, so they are transparent when you open them in Photoshop. So you want to make sure these are also the same scale so they line up perfectly when you import them into Photoshop. So here now I have pretty much the majority of my mass of colors selected. Now I'm just adjusting my lines and I'm going to start tracing over the trees and give it a nice hand-drawn texture. You could use the AutoCAD line work, but this is a great way to add a little bit of character and uniqueness to your drawing that really doesn't take that much time. So just really closely following the outline of the trees, but also giving it a little bit of imperfection and character. I think that goes a long way to make the drawing really feel, unique and special to the design. The brush I'm using here with the stylus is the standard brush that comes with Photoshop. You can use custom brushes or pressure sensitive ones to give you more variation in the line. Sometimes I like to do that, but for this I think it works best and looks best if the line is somewhat consistent, especially with the outline of the tree canopies. So I'm almost done with the tree canopy here, and these will be just infilled with white to show the overhead canopy of that tree. And I'm just going to fill that in for now, and then now I'm going to start working on the plants below, the understory plantings, things like shrubs, ground covers, grasses, etc. So here I'm going to start with the hedge around the property. So I want to fade back the plant layer so I can see the line work that I'm drawing better. So the lines that I'm drawing are bold, and then the faded back ones are kind of recessed back. In this I'm just giving it kind of a almost conifer-like texture, kind of swooped, sharp, kind of grassy texture. And this is because this is an evergreen hedge. I want to give it that character and show that in the plan as best as I can. This will really come second nature. Drafting or drawing on a tablet is really fun. It's great because you don't have to erase anything, nothing's permanent, you can delete it or edit it later. And that's why I think this technique is so useful, because you get that effect of of a sketchy, nice hand-drawn plan, but with the editability of a digital drawing. So here the shrubs I'm drawing, they're more soft, leafy shrubs like a pittosporum, and I'm going to give them that kind of leafy texture with these lumpy lines going around it. And while I'm working on this plan, I like to consistently keep adjusting the colors to make sure everything's balanced. You can also do this at the end of the drawing, but I like to work on it at the beginning, or all the way through. And here I'm making, this is a formium, so I want to give it some of that character of a strappy leaf, kind of following what the AutoCAD symbol was, not making it too much different. You don't want to make your symbols too complicated or they will look messy. You want to make it as simple as possible, just outlining the groups of plants. You don't want to, if a plant is right next to another plant, there's a large group of plants, you want to make sure that you show the outline of all the plants, not each individual plant. This will help the plan read much better and will help your graphics clearly be understood by whoever's looking at it. If you were to just draw every single plant, it would look like a mess. That's why planting plans are just useful for showing where plants go, and you don't present those to a client. And you can see here I'm just going over the outline, showing a little bit of texture on the inside, just to give it some depth and some life to it, but not going completely around each plant symbol. So this is kind of like a hybrid plan that shows a lot of planting detail, but not too much to the point where it's too messy. I think this is a nice way to make a plan that is informative and beautiful. So now I'm going to do the perimeter hedge, which is also a leafy hedge, and this one I'm just going to continue kind of like this lumpy leafy texture, but with swoops on the inside to give it a little bit of inconsistency and character. And this is a pretty large planted hedge, so this can take some time. You could also repeat and clone stamp this tool if you want to save some time, but I like to draw the whole thing. So now that we've drawn the hedge, we can work on the smaller plants that are in the plan. And for here, I'm going to start working on the grass. So just giving it a slightly grassy texture around the perimeter of the lawn area. Giving it a sharp, jagged texture. Just going along the perimeter. Bring some swoops and sharp points, bring it inside, give it some texture. And going around the mulch areas. And then what I like to do is give some arching kind of swoops, big arches that go through the lawn, and I'm going to stipple that and give that some texture, and that will give the lawn kind of like a flowy, nice feel to it instead of just like this flat thing. So it gives it some three-dimensionality. Even though a lawn is a flat thing, you want to give it some life, so it's not just reading as flat, and stippling is a great way to achieve that. Then just keep stippling and stippling along these lines, going thicker or more stippling around the points where it connects to the edges. So it's almost like a gradation of stipples. And this takes a little bit of practice to get it right. You can always erase things that you don't want and start over. But yeah, I would experiment with that and practice it. So I'm adjusting the color for the lawn area, make it look a little bit more like lawn. Then also doing a little bit of dodge and burn. So dodge and burn is a great tool that I like to use that lightens and darkens materials in Photoshop. And I would highly recommend you use that for your renderings. So I'm going through to bolden up the trunks of the trees, of all the existing trees. Those are the ones with the white fill for the canopy. Now filling in the sidewalk. And now I'm going to start looking for some textures, some real-world textures to fill in my plan. You can use just basic color as your plan, but in order to give it a little bit more reality to it, get that character of that material in here, I want to use a fill. So here I got a picture of decomposed granite that I'm stamp tooling on the surface. So the stamp tool is a great way to incorporate some real-world materials into your design illustration. Then adjusting the color, make sure it's not too saturated and it's balanced with the overall plan. So now I'm looking for a grass texture and going to, once again, clone stamp tool that, making sure the overlaps of the stamp tool look natural and aren't hard edges, and once again adjusting the color, making it look balanced with the whole plan. You can easily, one color can easily throw off the balance of an illustration, and while you're working on it continuously, make sure that everything looks balanced. So if it's one thing is too saturated, it's going to look wrong. So here I am filling in the color of this concrete patio, and now I'm going to be looking for a concrete texture to fill in the concrete areas. In this you want something that's pretty consistent, no big aggregates in it or weird textures. You just want a basic concrete fill. So here I'm once again clone stamping it, making sure all the overlap looks right. And I like to use a faded brush for this, so there's no hard lines when you overlap, and it's really easy to blend it that way. Make it look like natural concrete. So here I'm filling in some of the small ornamental grasses and just giving it a grassy texture, fading back those plant symbols. So here's a mass of plants that once again I'm just filling in the perimeter, giving the inside a little bit of texture, but getting that perimeter line filled in so it's showing as a mass of plantings instead of individual plants. Here just filling in individual shrubs. And groups of grasses. And just basically going through the whole plan and finishing up all these plant lines. Like I said earlier, you could just leave the CAD lines as they are if you're in a rush for time and just fill it in with color. But for the sake of this rendering, I wanted to give it a nice hand-drawn feel as opposed to a typical CAD plan. And another thing you want to do when there's a plant over another plant, say like a large shrub over a grass or a lower understory plant, when the two overlap, you want the one that's larger and more dominant, the line work to be over the other one. So you don't want the understory plant's line work showing within the upper story plant. So you can see that over in these shrubs, the shrubs are above, they're reading as above because the line work from the lower story plants is not showing. The only place this is an exception is the existing trees, because you want to show the design under those trees. That's why we showed it just as a white fill, a transparent white fill, where everything is legible below. And this is all about the hierarchy of line weight and line work, and making sure your design is reading. So you're seeing that the things that are larger are above, and then the things that are below are reading as below. This is very important for, I think, successful illustration and for you to convey your design. So now I have all the line work completed, and I'm going to start infilling the plant colors. So make sure this is on a separate layer, separate from all the line work, and I'm going to just select a color. It doesn't have to be perfect yet. And just start infilling with a brush. So this is a pressure sensitive brush, so I can better fill. I mean, once you practice enough with this, you can really feel for how sensitive it will be when it expands with more pressure, and I think it's a lot easier than just a standard brush size. So I want to make sure that each plant is on its own layer. So each color is on a separate layer. So when you edit this later and you're adjusting the colors, you can easily distinguish between each layer. If you did this all in one layer, it would get very difficult to edit the colors later. So make sure that each individual plant type is on its own layer. And you can see here that that white overhead tree canopy of the existing trees is above the infill of this shrub that I'm filling in right now. And you want to keep that for the entirety of the drawing. So the nice thing about drawing this line, I can also select with the magic wand for this large group of shrubs. And there's some gaps in between. You want to find those and fill those in. So that's what I'm doing right now, is finding the places where the magic wand selection tool is leaking out. And this took a little bit of time because I was a little bit sloppy with the line work, so bear with me here. So now that I was able to select it, I was able to infill it. So just block that color in, label it, and then start infilling the rest of the plants. So now this is a ornamental grass, Festuca glauca. I'm going to give it a kind of bluish tone for now. Probably something like this in the final rendering. Infill below the existing trees. Just using the brush tool, fill this in, erase the parts that, if you were outside of the plant, gotta keep inside that line. So layers are incredibly important for any plan rendering, any rendering of any kind in Photoshop. For example, for this plan in particular, the client came back with some revisions to the design, and thankfully with the layering, it's really easy to edit, as opposed to if everything was on one layer, it would be just a mess. So cannot emphasize how important layering is, naming of your layers, and proper layer management. It's very important. So now that all the plant colors are filled in, I'm going to start giving the plant some depth by dodging and burning. So dodge and burn is a great way to add highlights and lowlights to the plants. So essentially what it's doing is it's brightening and darkening. So dodge is to brighten and burn is to darken. And you can alternate between the two by holding down Alt, the Alt key on the keyboard, and just go through it. And it's like a brush that's burning and darkening. And it's a great way to add a highlight on the side that there will be the light coming from, and then a low light on the side that will be in shadow. And this is a very quick, easy way to give life to a drawing, because things in reality aren't flat, they shouldn't read as flat, and if you want something to look more lively and realistic and I think more beautiful, it should have some depth in regards to lighting, and dodge and burn is a great way to do that. So even on all the materials, concrete, decomposed granite, lawn, I like to do dodge and burn. I think that's what gives a plan a nice sense of depth. And in other plans, if I had some proposed trees, I would also dodge and burn those. But in this case, all the trees are existing and they're just infilled with white. And with the dodge and burn, it's nice to use some different textured brushes. So in this case, I'm using a watercolor texture brush, and it's great for adding really kind of grungy, realistic textures to flat materials. So here I'm dodge and burning the lawn area, and you can see it's giving a little bit more life to it. You can see there's drifts of grass as opposed to just flat. And this is a lot of trial and error. I go a lot back and forth between just trying things out, and sometimes they don't work, sometimes they do. And here filling in the wood. So just using a brown, then I'm going to draw some wood grain over it, being really kind of loose and artsy, get the grains of the wood, not being too detailed, just showing enough because this isn't going to read. I want to make sure this reads from a large scale when it's printed. You don't want to get too fussy with details. You want to really be mindful of how this is going to be presented to the client and how they're going to be reading it. If it's printed out, you want to focus on different details than if it's just viewed on a computer screen. So now it's my absolute favorite part of any plan rendering that I ever do is adding the shadows. This is the best part because it pops all those plants off the page. It really gives it some depth and dimension, and it's very satisfying and fast. So what I like to do is I like to pick a dark, very dark, deep blue and give it some, lower the opacity so it's slightly transparent. Blue is very nice because it's going to be different than typically any color that's on a plan, on a landscape plan that is. There's not usually a lot of blue that you use in a plan, so this will add some contrast to the plan. And just going around the shaded side of the plants. So where we did that highlight, it's going to be on the opposite end of the plant symbols. And just kind of try to make it look like there's a ball and then the shadow is being cast on the other side. So treating the plants as if they're round objects. And doing the same over the overhead tree canopy. That'll help make those pop and read as something that's over everything, even though they're fully transparent. And go through and delete or erase anything that doesn't look right. And just making little arches on these shrubs. And now you can see that it's really helping pop those plant symbols off the page. And without this, it would read as pretty flat and unlively. And even on the smallest plants, these understory ones, just putting a slight line. And then even on the stairs, because the stairs would be casting shadow, and on the perimeter of the house, just adding a little slight touch of shadow, I think helps a lot. And it goes a long way. Don't do too much, because you don't want to cast a lot of shadow over your design. Just giving a little bit of artistic license. And here, adding a little bit to the stairs will help those pop off, deleting parts that shouldn't be there. And the final ones, adding to the trees. So now I'm going to add the layer for the overstory tree canopy. So this is going to be on a separate layer than the understory shadow. This way we can put that tree canopy shadow over the plant material, over the plant colors, and then the plant understory shadow will be below all the plant material. So this will help pop the trees above the understory plants, making it feel as if there's even another layer of dimension with the trees. So you have essentially 3 levels. You have the hardscape ground plane, the understory plants, and the tree canopy. So now we have the final landscape plan completely rendered in Photoshop. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you learned something that you can apply for your future designs. And let me know if you have any comments or questions in this video, and feel free to subscribe or follow me at Pangea Express on Instagram. Alright guys.